following video contains flashing lights and disturbing topics that may be too much for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
In this video,
we have a very unique education program, and it's all based on rewarding positive behaviors and maybe finding them if they're not doing the work that they should be.
One thing about the staff, they always communicate with me. One of the schools that have 24-hour surveillance, a lot of schools don't have that. And they're monitored when they're in the house. So they're constantly being monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I had no idea that they tortured the children in the school.
Cheryl testified what her son was like when she visited him 3 days later.
It's just such a feeling of my child is finally in a place where he's safe.
yeah. Right.
A young man uncertain with the path he wants to choose for his life's work walks into the doors of Harvard for the first time. After throwing himself into studies, he happens to pick up a book by the name of Walden 2 by B.F. Skinner. After reading from cover to cover, the young man has an epiphany. What would it take to create a utopia? A perfect society that has removed all undesirable reactions and actions that would cause harm or problems for anyone. The ideal world shown within questioning one's own free will. Under the wing of B.F. Skinner, the man would graduate with a PhD in the sciences of behavioral psychology. The man had tried and failed to create communes based on his idea of a behavioral utopia, even after approaching other willing participants in an almost cult-like fashion. In one instance, a married couple had been invited to join the man at his commune, but decided against it after the man made it clear that the woman of the relationship would have to sleep with him as well. The man would go on to make another small commune where he would test his mettle on a 3-year-old girl that lived there. With parental consent, he experimented on her using psychological methods such as positive reinforcement, timeouts, and then finally, physical punishment. He noted that the 3-year-old girl only responded to physical punishments after her reactions to him faking the motion of striking her in the face, which he did often, made her stop her actions. Under this pretense, he began experimenting on participants until eventually founding the Behavior Research Institute in 1971. This man, Matthew Israel, the doctor who created what we now know as the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center. And since 1971, he has been a danger to every unfortunate patient or student who has walked through his door.
Before I came to JRC, I think it was like 1.5 years, I didn't go to school. I was practically running the streets with my friends and getting into all types of trouble. My transition to JRC was kind of difficult.
Heart was pounding, my head's going back and forth saying, Jen, just do it, just run. Just run out of this place, run into the street. Either you'll escape or you'll get hit by a car, but either way, you'll be away from this place.
After issues with opening a Californian branch for the Behavioral Research Institute, Israel focused on his location in Providence, Rhode Island. The institute was eventually renamed to the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center in 1994 to honor the judge who helped them secure state credentials in the 1980s, essentially saving the program from being finished. Israel managed to secure multiple locations in California, as well as continue work in his new location in Canton, Massachusetts. However, since the late 70s, reports have come from multiple sources, including former residents and even staff, about the horrors that some of the special needs patients endured. Within the school, many students with educational, emotional, conduct, and neurological issues attend sessions to help better them in whatever activities and situations they need work in. They pride themselves on not using medicine as a crutch to treat their patients. However, there are stories about special needs students being sprayed with a hose, having meals held from them, being restrained for hours on end, and using other forms of aversive therapy in place of real treatments.
Aversion therapy, sometimes called aversive therapy or aversive conditioning, is used to help a person give up a behavior or habit by having them associate it with something unpleasant. Aversion therapy is most known for treating people with addictive behaviors, like those found in alcohol use disorder. Source: Healthline.com.
However, the ones that the Judge Rotenberg Center for Education uses punishments are not ethical in any sense. One of the last resorts in the aversive therapy sticks out among the rest. Students that may be considered a handful by staff may be fitted with a device called a graduated electronic decelerator, which was created by Israel after he'd been taught about skin-shocking devices used by the parents of one of his students. Using this device, staff members can administer shocks to electrodes mounted onto the arms, legs, or torso of the student that range from 15 to 90 milliamps over a 2 to 3 second window. Many people compare them to a taser, however, most tasers only use 1 to 3 milliamps. Staff had gone on record that the GED was even worn by students while they had to shower, and a man who had previously worked there recalled having to shock a student 4 separate times, simply for getting out of his seat to give him a hug. The JRC claims this pain is about that of a bee sting, but as I'll be showing you later, that is simply not the case. According to a former student and now YouTuber by the name of Jennifer Musumba, students can have multiple GED devices attached to their body, and are often forced to carry the devices in a fanny pack or a backpack, while under the constant threat of being shocked for transgressions that may have already been committed. In one instance, Musumba recalls that she was once woken up from sleep just to be shocked for something she did hours prior, leading to an increase in fear and anxiety regarding the staff. After trying to escape the school by running through the fire exit door, eventually staff tackled Musumba and put her into restraints after shocking her for multiple undesirable behaviors.
Now, I don't know if you've seen any of my other videos, but these shocks really, really hurt. They're like these electrodes that you wear on your body, and you have a backpack with the wires and the batteries are in your backpack. So you have these wires coming out of your backpack, going up your shirt, down your pant legs, and they attach to these electrodes, which are about 6 inches long. It lasts 2 seconds, but it feels like 10-15 seconds because time stops when you get shocked by these things. The feeling is like this pulsing, pulling, yanking, burning sensation that you get in your arm or leg or whatever spot they've shocked you in. It doesn't go through your whole body, it will just stay on that one spot where they shock you, but it will tear into it and your whole muscle will clench up like this and like raise up, and you have no control over your muscle for that period of time. It's just a terrible pain. They decided to shock me for running away, and I don't know what else they added to the list. So I got a few shocks, and then they put me into restraints, which you have to wear around your waist and your like ankles, kind of like shackles. That's the best I can describe it, like shackles at in prison.
I will leave a link to Musumba's full video below that details her escape attempt. I recommend checking it out, as the experience she describes is both disturbing and heartbreaking to say the least. With stories like these, multiple investigations have been conducted throughout the decades. In 1981, the state of California had launched an investigation into the BRI California campuses after a resident had passed away. Investigations had found that numerous students had been hit in the face, bruised extremely bad, humiliated, and not adequately fed. Soon after, California revoked access to the building for Israel, who turned it over to his second wife, Judy Weber Israel. Renaming the campuses to Tobin World 1, 2, and 3 respectively, she took over day-to-day operations. Under her leadership, it was found that the school was just as worse as when Israel had been running it. In 2014, a concerned parent of a 7-year-old student had filed a lawsuit against Tobin World for what was cited as the culture of abuse created by staff, after she alleged her child had been tripped, given a bloody nose, and had been choked on his own blood using a plastic bag by the vice president and 4 other staff members. The state of California investigated once more and found that the previously banned Matthew Israel had been working there without proper credentials. In addition, a Snapchat video story was uncovered that depicted some students being restrained in the air by staff while being beaten in 2016. The state immediately revoked all credentials from the school, which eventually shut down in 2019 due to a lack of funding and the inability to seek out new students due to state litigation. Meanwhile, at the Judge Rotenberg Center in Canton, Massachusetts, state legislators were keeping a close eye after multiple deaths have been reported from the center. In 2006, the New York State Education Department released a 26-page report regarding their assessment of the school. According to the report, 2/3 of the staff only had high school diplomas and no training in the care of special needs students. Interviews with students and staff also brought to light that the GED was used as a go-to adversive, instead of a last resort one as so claimed by the school. The most common reasons for being shocked were minor acts of non-compliance, but the report also stated the other reasons for shocking, which included failing to be neat, stopping work for more than 10 seconds, failure to respond to staff after 5 seconds, using the bathroom without permission, urinating on oneself after being refused the right to use the bathroom, and even screaming while being shocked for a previous infraction. Before and after videos that had been sent to the media as well as to the parents to convince them that the treatments were working had been discovered to have been staged, using reward incentives for the students to heavily influence their performance in the videos. Some students were forced to sleep tied to chairs or other room fixtures, some even in a kneeling position. And the more the department dug, the more vile things they seemed to uncover. Six deaths happened from 1980 to 1998, and they are all on record to involve the JRC. In 1980, A 25-year-old man named Robert Cooper died of a hemorrhagic bowel obstruction after being transported to the hospital via private car rather than by ambulance. 1 year later in 1981, a 14-year-old boy with autism named Danny Oswald died while restrained face down on his bed. The institute was not given permission for residential restraining at this time. In 1985, a 22-year-old autistic man named Vincent Militich had been restrained and forced to wear a white noise-emitting sensory deprivation helmet as a punishment for making inappropriate sounds. Having a history of seizures, he died of asphyxiation after doctors weren't quick enough to help him. 2 staff doctors and center director Matthew Israel were deemed negligent, but Militich's mother chose to not press charges, opting instead to sue for $10 million. 2 years later, in 1987, 29-year-old Abigail Gibson had a heart attack after being subjected to daily aversives, passing away 2 days later at Sturdy Memorial Hospital. 1990 saw the passing of Linda Cornelison, a 19-year-old nonverbal and intellectually disabled student who died due to complications of a ruptured bowel. Cornelison had her food withheld from her as a punishment. Complaining about pain, staff assumed Cornelison was acting out and proceeded to administer over 50 physical aversives, before calling an ambulance 5 hours later. EMS found her unconscious when the ambulance arrived. It was found after investigations into her death that a 7-year period of her staying there resulted in being subjected to almost 89,000 aversives, ranging from shocks, pinching, restraint, and food denial, among many others. While not a death, an incident did occur in December of 2007 regarding patient safety. A former resident of the JRC had impersonated a staff member and alleged 2 patients had misbehaved earlier in the day. Later in the night, staff woke both of the residents from their beds, shocking one of them 77 times and the other one 29. One of the residents had to be treated for electrical burns, causing the federal and state governments to investigate. Under the order of Matthew Israel, the tapes regarding the shock and even the phone calls were destroyed, causing Israel to be indicted in May of 2011. He resigned from his director's position as part of a plea deal with the state. Not long after, a lawsuit filed by the mother of an autistic teen named Audrey McCollins had brought a video of the Judge Rotenberg Center to light. In the 2012 lawsuit, a video from 2002 was shown regarding McCollins' treatment. During the video, McCollins was restrained on a 4-point board, face down, before being shocked over 31 times after refusing to take off his coat. More shocks were administered as he began crying and screaming for help, with the center listing that as major disruptive behavior. The day after the incident, McCollins' mother had to have him treated for burns at the hospital, as he was unable to drive nor speak. Settling for an undisclosed amount, the case was wrapped up, but not before the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture had an appeal come from the Disability Rights International Human Rights Organization. In 2013, it was officially declared that the GED had violated the United Nations Convention Against Torture. Following this, the United States Food and Drug Administration had considered banning all electric shock aversive conditioning devices. However, efforts to create full or even partial bans, especially with the COVID pandemic during 2021, have been difficult. While courts have been fighting to figure out the laws for the practices of the Judge Rotenberg Center, The center continues to use the GED device as a method of therapy to this very day. As of now, over 50 people are still fitted with these devices today, making the Judge Rotenberg Center the only school that can legally torture their students in the United States.